Gamecock fans, now you can have your coffee and also support the Gamecocks in a championship quest to get to the top of the SEC and the top of the country by going to GamecockCoffee.com and purchasing Rise and Shine New Orleans Roast Gourmet Coffee. All of your purchases go to benefit Garnet Trust and put NIL dollars in the coffer of the Gamecocks official NIL collective. Check it out today and support the Gamecocks NIL efforts. Good morning, Gamecock fans. JC Shurburtt with coffee here on Wednesday, Hump Day, March 26th, the year of our Lord 2025. Thanks for joining me this morning. Lots to talk about, lots of good stuff, some bad stuff. I'm not going to get too fired up either way, right? Got to kind of be chill on a Wednesday. Anyway, rough night on the diamond in Charlotte last night, yet again. South Carolina is pitching just I don't know. I don't know what it is. It gets worse. It's gotten worse. Probably because of the competition, level of competition. Usually does that, but Gamecocks get behind 8-3, had a nice rally, cut it to 8-7. I was a little frustrated with that because they did load the bases. They ended up clearing the bases, but completely you got that out, and then no base runners, of course, but they pushed across the tying run. Bo Hollins with a nice hit, and then Zach Russell comes in, and all of a sudden, boom, they hit a ball to the moon. North Carolina did after a leadoff walk, which is uncharacteristic of the freshman this year. North Carolina piles on three more. It's 13-8. That's the final. That's where they leave it up in Charlotte. They play Tennessee this weekend. Just got to hope things get better. I don't know. You look at the lineup, and I say a lot. I'm not a baseball guy, but maybe sometimes, opinions from people that aren't so close to it and aren't trying to explain away every move work. But and Mike Morgan is right because he kind of downplays tinkering with the lineup. He's like, well, if you don't have players, you just don't have players. But, I kind of look at it. Henry Casmar was supposed to be a really good hitter for this team. He's starting to come on. He's still kind of down in the 9-hole. If you don't have guys to kind of protect Ethan Petrie, and they did move him to the 2-hole last night. I mean, I don't know that it benefits you necessarily for Nathan Hall to lead off. You got a guy like Carrion that's pretty good at slapping the ball into the outfield and getting base hits and being productive, or even Casmar there. Maybe they need to move him down. KJ Scobie didn't have such a great game last night, but he's hitting the ball. Guys like Hollins and LeCroy, even Kennedy Jones probably are better suited for the end. I don't know though. I just don't want to talk about it. Baseball's been so good at South Carolina, even in down years under Chad Holbrook and Mark Kingston. Kingston had a real doozy of a bad SEC season a few years back, but I don't think since 98, 96, this is before Ray Tanner, for about 30 years. That it's ever felt this. It feels hopeless, right? It just feels like even after coming back last night, when they came back and cut it to 8-7, I was like, well, they didn't get that last run. North Carolina's probably going to, put up a bunch of runs this inning, and that'll be that. They just couldn't quite get there. Well, then when they tied it off Hollins' hit, I was like, well. Maybe they'll probably bring in Parker Marlott. They brought in Russell instead, but I was like, they can shut him down, maybe get another couple of runs. Yeah, things are feeling good. The fans did show up at Charlotte last night. Sounded like it. The Gamecock cheer came alive. And for a brief moment, you felt like, well, hey, this is Gamecock baseball again. And then all of a sudden, the pitching failed. I don't know what they can do about pitching. I don't know who's there. Last night, it was Johnny Holstaff, and I think they did good in spots. North Carolina obviously is a good hitting team. The ballpark lends itself to power hitting. But man, you come all the way back and tie it, and then you'll give a leadoff walk on 4 pitches, and then that guy, the catcher for UNC, the All American, hits it to Fort Mill. That's discouraging. Um, so I don't know. If I were Paul Maneri, I'd probably look at revamping the lineup because obviously with the pitching struggling like it is, against non you know mid-major competition, like good competition. Mike Morgan pointed this out too. The ERA in SEC plays over 7. Throw in Clemson and North Carolina, those numbers are probably up there. And this is a team that has to pitch well to win because they don't have a lot of. The lineup is not full of big boppers and bashers, and I keep seeing these teams that are and that do have good pitching and bullpen people that come out of the bullpens. I don't know. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, most likely. But and it could it be a function of really good teams? I know John Whittle says Oklahoma's not considered to be a contender for the SEC. They look pretty good to me when they were in town. Obviously, they're a newcomer to the league. I like their coach. I like Skip Johnson. I think he's a good coach. He's rebuilt that program. I kind of like the way he operates. But so they're good. Clemson's good, obviously, although they lost to Coastal in a midweek game last night, 8-2. But they're good. They'll probably hit their normal slump like they do sometimes midseason and then come back or not, because sometimes they don't do so well in the postseason. But Clemson's good. Obviously, Arkansas is very good. And, what's kind of sad about that, Arkansas lost a ton of good players off last year's team, and they were able to go junior college and transfer portal and reload it just like that. Not South Carolina. This team's not as good as last year's team as of right now. The body of work by comparison. So that's tough. It's really a tough pill to swallow. And then you got Tennessee this weekend. North Carolina is obviously really good. So, maybe they start playing some of these teams that don't have good records and the results get better. It's the season's not over, but it just doesn't feel good right now. And like I said, for even in the lean years, man, I'll go back to 1999. That was kind of the low point for Carolina sports all the way around 98, 99, on into the spring of 2000. Gamecocks were 1-21 in football. They lost 21 straight games. Even Lou Holtz comes in. And maybe this baseball season's like that first year under Lou. There's some weird bad things that have happened just like that year, but who knows? You're not talking about a baseball program with the football tradition South Carolina had in 1999 either. At that point, Carolina had been in 9 bowl games ever and won one. Never been in the mix for the SEC East, nothing. I mean, they were a little better than Vandy, Kentucky, not as good as Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida. Spurrier said that when they asked him about the perception of the program. But that was, 98, 99 to 2000 was tough. Men's basketball had gone a similar collapse in 98, 99. They were coming off 2 straight NCAA tournament appearances, had BJ Mackey back, went 8-21, and were the worst team in the SEC by a mile. Following year, 99, 2000, they had a good young team, Chuck Idson, Tony Kitchings, those guys. Still 15-17, losing record, disappointment. Did make it to I believe the quarters, maybe the semi. They won a couple games in the SEC tournament that year. And then baseball rolls around in 2000, and Gamecocks go 50-6, finished 56-10. Had a disappointing, got bounced to the Supers by Louisiana Lafayette, but Carolina was number one team in the country. So my point to say all that is that you've always had baseball. Not to sound like James Earl Jones from Field of Dreams. It's just baseball. We've always had baseball. Um, but no matter what happened during the Kingston and Holbrook eras where the program did slip, I just don't know that I've felt this hopeless about a baseball team before. Even the team that had a terrible SEC record a couple. Remember they were under Kingston. They were out of pitching. They didn't really have a bunch of arm injuries and stuff, and had no pitching. That team could hit. That team, I think they took 2 of 3 from Texas in a series. There were times where they were capable. I haven't seen any sign that they've been capable this year outside of the one win over Oklahoma. you know. So anyway, I said I wasn't going to talk about it, but I did. It's on my mind this morning. The softball team, women's sports are always pretty good at Carolina, right? The softball team, big win over Clemson. I've said this before. I think one of the reasons people started paying more attention to Carolina being very mediocre in softball was because Clemson started a program and put money into it. And lo and behold, they start beating Carolina after not having a team. And it's that was kind of like, oh, wait a minute. And South Carolina, anywhere in the South's good state for softball. Ashley Chastain Woodard is a tremendous coach and a Gamecock and gets it. And so good crowd out there. Beckham Field, they beat Clemson 6-0 and continue a nice run. I mean, they got LSU on the road this weekend. So as much as I'm trying to refrain from saying in this league, in this league, softball's tough. It's the SEC. So we'll see how they do against the Bayou Bengals this weekend down in Baton Rouge. The women's basketball team goes to Birmingham, plays Maryland on Friday. That's something to look forward to there. But and then there's basketball transfer portal stuff. Nothing really new to add there. If something happens between now and the show, obviously we'll talk about it also on thebigspur.com where you can join up. NIL money for baseball is, and I'm not, like I said, not throwing in the towel on the season. It's just, you got to be realistic and live in reality sometimes. And it's one thing if you keep losing and there's signs, well, if they just do this couple things here and there, they'll be right back in it. And in basketball, it's sort of unprecedented because you kept waiting around for them men's basketball, for them to win one of those close ones or a couple of those close ones. And they never did. I mean, they lost all their close games. So, except Clemson. And that was a game that they almost lost. Probably, anyway. But not, baseball, you just don't see any signs. I mean, you're just kind of waiting around for hoping something good happens and then something bad happens there. So, but looking forward NIL wise with baseball, what's going to happen is a lot of this NIL baseball stuff going to full scholarships is going to have to come from outside NIL, i.e. Garnet Trust, businesses, things like that. So what I want to say here is go to GamecockCoffee.com. Order some coffee and some popcorn. I need to text my guy that's distributing this, the company Garnet Trust we partnered with, and just because I know somebody had ordered one on March 4th and hadn't gotten there yet as of a couple of days ago. So I'll check that out. It's coming, folks. I just I never really got an answer as to how long it would be, and that's probably important information from you guys, right? So go to GamecockCoffee.com, buy that coffee, buy that popcorn if you want to fix Carolina baseball. Assuming it does not get better. There are some good young players on the team. I think Hollins had some nice moments defensively last night. KJ Scobie obviously has had a good year. They get some good young pitchers. You have to retain them. Transfer portal, same way in baseball as it is everything else. But when you look at the revenue share split, the approximate or projected revenue share split, baseball doesn't get a whole lot. And I would, it's not going to be even as much as what they spent this year on this team in the offseason. So, GamecockCoffee.com, didn't want to mention that. All right, on to good things. And look, it's spring practice. Everybody feels good. The first thing I want to say about football is don't let disappointing seasons in basketball and baseball cause you to be skeptical on football. A different sport, right? And I don't know that expectations were super high for baseball. Obviously, they were picked 14th out of 16. They're probably about 15th now. I would guess if you did a power rating or something in the standings, because you have teams that are over. They're not that bad. Basketball is picked 11th, which would have gotten them in the NCAA tournament, by the way. And the thing is, with both of those sports, there was a lot of optimism internally. Paul Maneri says we're going to be better than people think. Lamont Paris was defiant about being picked 11th. And, I think that when you talk about football last year, you have to, Shane Beamer said that they knew they were going to be pretty good internally. He wasn't as bold as those two. And if you listen to him, he talks about needing to improve and filling holes and stuff like that. Beamer's an optimistic guy, but I don't think he's ever like come out and had a season where he told everybody how good they were going to be or they were going to be better, and then they weren't. 2023 obviously was not as good as people expected, but we know what happened with injuries. And I'm going to tell you this. If there's a bunch of injuries this year, Carolina does have better depth at certain positions to handle it, but it's not going to be the season you think it's. I mean, it's not, 7-5, 6-6 will be a good year. And that's just how it goes in football. Sometimes in football, teams just flat out don't get it and they disappoint. Sometimes in football, it's a situation where, there's uncontrollables. And ... in this league, I would say against the schedule Carolina plays, because you do have Clemson and Virginia Tech too, this coming season. You don't have room for catastrophic injuries happening. But I would encourage you, don't let that curb your enthusiasm for football. I think with all the new players on the roster, it's logical to think, well, not show me mode, because that sounds like, oh, you owe me this, that, I'm not going to listen to anything until the season starts. I mean, consume all the information, get excited about what you hear. But I think it's perfectly logical to say, well, we need to see how some of this works out, and as far as playing real games. And you're not going to know that till August 31st. So what my job and what I always like to do is say this. It's my job is to tell you and kind of talk about who's going to be lining up for Carolina this year, who's going to get in the two deep, who's going to start, who's making a move at practice. But I want to be clear that, and I realized that fans were kind of grabbing on to practice performances, spring performances, testing, things like that, and applying that to outcomes in the season. And so then it's like, well, we were told this, and so this is this. Yeah, without playing I guess a spring game against another team. Shoot, man, Syracuse and Colorado are talking about playing, and Oklahoma and Oklahoma State are talking about, Mike Gundy's talking about playing OU in the spring. So hey, maybe that's something that'll come. I wouldn't mind seeing it, but without playing anybody else, and which is dumb as a sport, especially as we move more towards professionalization or whatever. There's no level of football that doesn't have a scrimmage or a combined practice where you can get a look against somebody else outside of the scout team, except college football. But, without knowing, I mean, yeah, okay, so Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy looks like a man-child. Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy looks really good. Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, as far as in practice, stud defensive lineman. That doesn't mean when he lines up against Virginia Tech or LSU or Clemson or Alabama or whoever that he's going to be better than the guys they got. Last year, it was the opposite, really, as well. You kind of looked at some of these guys and you're like, they were just as good or better than the other team's players. So you just have to wait and see. But don't let the disappointment of men's basketball and baseball, curb your enthusiasm, I guess, for football. The football staff's worked really hard. The players work really hard. They've got some really good players. I'm just saying, don't let that, because like I've said before, South Carolina wants to be good at everything, and so it hurts. It's disappointing when the baseball team looks like that or the basketball team looks like they did. I get it. Just don't use the transitive property for football because South Carolina's really looking forward to this coming season in the gridiron. It's an anticipated year. There's a lot of work to do, and what I'm saying is I'm trying to be encouraging here. Don't let the negativity bleed over. And not negativity. Everybody's like positive versus negative, like it's all black and white. Don't sit there and become jaded about football because of other sports. And it's kind of uncharted waters. I mentioned the other day. I understand, 1 month of greatness. Otherwise, it's kind of been crappy in men's sports around here for a couple of years. And so I get it, but you know, this coming football season can be very good. And that brings me to what I wanted to kind of say today. And I want to talk about freaks. Ooh, freaks. Every SEC football team needs a couple of freaks. You got to have those guys to compete. I'll go ahead and say college football in general. I mean, every good team has a couple of freaks. And what I mean by that is guys that are just rare athletes. And freaks come in different levels, shapes, and sizes. But, you're talking about an athletic guy like a Nicky Manwari, obviously freak, 6'3", 229, can run, can cover. Absolute freak. Dylan Stewart, absolute freak. We'll talk about him here in a second. But, South Carolina, you have to have those. You have to have a blend. It's always about a blend with a football roster. You have to have guys that are freaks, that play like it, that use that talent. Sometimes it takes a year or two. Sometimes it doesn't, but they're freaky. You have to have guys that are overperformers, relative to their baseline talent level that maximize that talent. Again, it's a talent maximization game. You need glue guys and leaders, guys that may not even play a whole lot. But, last year, Davis Bevel, Robbie Ashford, and Luke Doty were critical as far as showing leadership on the offense and all that. And then you had Demetrius Knight, guys like that, Debo Williams on defense, Alex Huntley, Boogie Huntley. Not all of those are glue guys. The Knight's kind of a freak, if you ask me, because he's fast. But you need a blend of all those types of people in most instances to make our players to make a football team go roster wise. And you don't necessarily, some years you may have more of one than the other. But South Carolina's got some freaks now, and they're a lot of them are young. A lot of them are not necessarily young. Some are new, but Bruce Feldman puts out the freaks list every year. Nick Harbor's been number one. I think he slipped to number two this past time. Maybe I'm thinking about the fastest guys in college football that Brad did, and Harbor was too. But anyway, on offense, Mike Fury yesterday was extreme. And he's an enthusiastic guy, right? He's a positive guy. But what he said about the receivers backed up what I was told, which was, he's Darren Usher said this on his interview. He walks by Darren's office on the way out and says, "Thank you," every day. So he's very encouraged about this unit, which I don't think they were bad last year. I think there were a lot of new players and guys kept getting hurt and going in and out. It was inconsistent at receiver. South Carolina obviously had enough in the tank passing the ball to win. And they passed it well in certain games, but you had a young quarterback, and you had a tight end lead you in receptions and all that. And Josh Simon was kind of the go-to guy, so it wasn't a line it up, split them out five wide, chuck it all over the yard type of year, obviously by any stretch. But you kind of look at the receiving core now, and they flipped the room in many ways, you know, quickly, which the staff tends to do. You got an area where you're kind of lacking, and the University of South Carolina football program should never lack for receivers. I mean, there's always somebody that steps up. There's in-state talent at that position, accessible talent. There's a ton of them. They should never lack at receiver. And it has, I guess, for this decade, since 2020, there've been some lean years. I don't know that I would call last year a lean year, but certainly it wasn't like the 2022 receiving core that Beamer had once they figured out, hey, let's use it, let's use them. Yeah, in 2020, 2021 weren't that good at receiver, but they flipped the room. And I'll say when we talk about freaks here, freak does not necessarily mean football player, just to let you know. And then if somebody's not mentioned, it doesn't mean they can not make freaky plays or be athletic enough. It's just kind of well, that guy's different, right? The kids say that he's different. So Nick Harbor, obviously, it starts with him, 6'5", 225. The report from Coach Furry yesterday was good. Lots of good feedback about him doing well. I do think that, again, the national media or people that cover it from 10,000 feet, they're already beating the drum of this big breakout season because they hear he's doing better. It is what it is, folks. He's doing better. He's still a freak. Don't get me wrong. He needs to become a better football player. So I'm concerned that this narrative that's kind of being pushed by people with big megaphones, that, oh, Nick Harbor, Nick Harbor, Nick Harbor. And it's like Furry said yesterday during the press conference, Nick himself understands the expectations were too high because he's learning the new position. But as good as they can get him, the better, I guess, because he certainly got talent. I'll still maintain yards after catch, man. Need yards after catch. I want to see him break a tackle, run off and leave people, use that speed on the football field. But he is absolutely a physical freak. Brian Rowe, and this is funny because you learn this from the press conference yesterday, and then you kind of follow up. We've heard from contacts Brian Rowe is an amazing leaper and athlete and fast and has a lot of dog in him competitively. Just a superb athlete, the freshman receiver from North Carolina. And then, so he would be freaky. You don't have to be, have rare size. Sometimes you can do rare things for a guy your size. And as a 6-foot receiver that can sky and get it, I've said many times, that's what I loved about Shi Smith. He wasn't just a fast guy in the slot, but Brian Rowe is definitely a freak. And then lo and behold, Lex Cyrus, who's very similar to Brian Rowe, probably faster in a straight line. As far as, you look at his 100-meter time up in Pennsylvania, cold weather, 10-2. That's flying, folks. He's thin, but apparently he breaks the program record for vertical. So there's another guy that can jump. That's freaky for a slot receiver. Those guys that are like that end up in the NFL because they're jumping over 6'1" DBs, getting balls and coming down with it, and you love that. So I would have those three circled. Now, Malik Clark, does he have a chance to go play this year? Probably ahead of some of these guys, yes. Same with Donovan Murph coming in. But like I said, freak doesn't mean football player. But you got to have freaks, right? Because if you can get a freak up to being a great player, that's usually a NFL guy. And you want a lot of those. At tight end, although he's injured right now, Michael Smith, I think the guy that can move like that at 265 pounds, that can jump up and get the ball, soft hands, I think he's got a lot of special potential. On the offensive line, I do think there are probably more freaks than I'm talking about right now, but I'll go with Big Tree, who can move really well for 330, and then Josiah Thompson obviously does freaky weird things offensive line wise. On the defensive line, Dylan Stewart. I mean, I don't know what Dylan tests. I know he's 6'6", 250, and can bend like Gumby. You remember the Gumbies that you used to put out in the yard when the wind blew and they dance all over the place? He bends like that. The get off and bend with him, along with hand quickness and violence, I haven't seen very many guys like that in college football. This whole notion that Colin Simmons from Texas is a better defensive end than Dylan Stewart is something I cannot agree with. And I would say if Simmons is a little better, that is, Simmons probably more productive, but he didn't get, I don't think he got triple teamed. People took one look at Stewart and they were like, oh God, this guy's going to kill us if we're not careful. And if you notice in every game, even when games with Dylan's quiet, coaches didn't pay close. I mean, they didn't give Kyle Kennard special attention last year. They gave Dylan Stewart because you look at him on film and he's 3 yards in the backfield in half a second. Freaky. I will also go on the freaks list. Xavion Hardy, who Clayton White outlined and just backed up what I've been saying about him. JUCO kid, physically, with the nutrition and the working out and all that, he's got to pack it on. But Clayton White said something that kind of stood out to me, and this kind of backed up. He moves as well as anybody we've had here, and he's 6'5" on a short day. That's a freaky athlete, man, on the interior. Of course, on defense, Fred Johnson, man. Every day that goes by, I get more and more excited about Fred Johnson. 6'3", 245, can run, can jump, obviously a great athlete. And I think he'll be a really great football player this year. I'll also throw in Justin Okoronkwo from Alabama, because there's just not many guys that are 6'3", 220 that can run like him, that were gymnasts and lacrosse players back in his native Munich, Germany. That's a freaky athlete right there. And then in the secondary, I like all these players. I think they're all pretty good. But and I don't know if this guy will play a lot at all this year, but I'm going to go with Kendall Daniels Jr., 6'4", 220, and can run, play the multiple positions. I think he's a freaky guy. And then the freak of all freaks athletically is probably, Nick Harbor. But just the freak of all freaks in general has got to be Lenore Sellers, man. I mean, there haven't been too many quarterbacks in college football history in recent years that are that big, but also that fast, but also, because there's big, fast guys in a straight line. But Lenoris, he's 6'3", 240, but he runs like he's 205 pounds. I mean, or 210, 215, like a normal sized guy. He's quick. So he's hard to tackle, not only because he's so big, guys bounce off of him, but he's very, very quick. I haven't seen a lot of guys like that play quarterback. And so he is an absolute freak of all freaks. And that's a very important position. You don't have to have a freak at quarterback to win. But if you do, and he can play quarterback, which I believe Lenore Sellers can, that's a good day. So, in the 2026 class, just kind of eyeballing it as far as, I think Jazavian Currents, the safety DB from South Point, 6'3", 215, can run and cover, had a really good Navy All-American Bowl. I think he's a guy that could fit in that category as well, along with many others that they're targeting here in 2026, but did want to I almost feel like sometimes Currents is on the team because he committed early. You look at he and his dad on social media, they're always real positive about the Gamecocks, helping to recruit and fired up about it. And he did get, now that juniors can play in these all-star games, he was just like he was a senior, but he'll be playing at South Point this year. So he is a freak as well. So there's kind of the freaks. I think South Carolina, you can never have enough of them. I'll add one more. I'm going to add one more. Let me go back. Based on recent feedback, Jalen Brown, the DN from Missouri that came in, who I think could start opposite. I read something on ESPN. They said they're just penciling Brian Thomas Jr. in based on stats. I say not so fast, my friend. They're all going to rotate, so Thomas Jr. could start. I suppose. I know they really like Thomas Jr. I like him too as a pass rusher, situational pass rusher, and he's played a lot of ball, so maybe he does. I mean, Brown's a redshirt freshman, but yeah, I was told the other day 6'6", 265, and moves really well and is an athletic upgrade over Kyle Kennard. Athletic. Don't go thinking he's going to get 12 sacks. uh, again, freaks don't equal football players, but they're, number one, kind of surprised at how good he is so far, and especially how fast he is. So I'll add him to the freaks list, man. We probably need to do that with him. So they're a lot, and they're more than there's more than there used to be, certainly. And that's why you just keep recruiting, and that's what Shane Beamer's doing. So we'll see how it all works out. First day in pads was just yesterday. Lots of assistants talked to the media. Marquell Blackwell, running Mets coach, good to hear from him, and Mike Fury, like I mentioned. And so that was a good day. Torian Gray, secondary coach, was also speaking with the media. He did confirm Kilgore. They're leaving him at nickel, which, I was 50-50 with it. My concern would have been, are you going to weaken nickel and then safety as well, with that, if Jelon's maybe not as suited to go back there. And I can't rule out that shift happening at some point, but I think now, with Kilgore nailing down the nickel, I think you're going to see ultimately Peyton Williams land the opposite safety position from DQ Smith, unless somebody comes out of nowhere. I think Peyton's probably the odds-on favorite, and I think Peyton Williams has played pretty well at times, in substitution or when there's been people hurt. I mean, he played the whole Vandy game last year because DQ was a last-minute scratch. Torian Gray also talked about DQ Smith flipping over to Eamon Waray's spot to a certain extent, and so we'll see what happens there. My dog is barking. It's rare for him to do that. But we're about done anyway. This has been Coffee with JC Shurburtt. Don't forget the morning show coming up. Will Crow is usually in on Wednesdays to co-host, and I'm sure they'll talk some baseball like they always do. And then Phil and I will be back. I think we're going to dig into a lot of football today. Update, maybe some thoughts on the bracket, all that good stuff. I hope nothing topical comes up that gets me going today. I think we spent too much time away from the Gamecocks yesterday on the show portion, and so I want to kind of come back strong with that today. All right, folks, this has been Coffee with JC Shurburtt. Hope everyone has a wonderful Wednesday. Holla at you soon.